Welcome to the Idaho debates, a look at the candidates on the 2014 primary ballot.
All right, thank you, Senator Fulcher. Mr. Brown, your remarks.
You know, I was filling out my taxes a couple of months ago, and I thought to myself, thank God we don't get all the government that we pay for. They say that the child is the father of the man. And when I was a kid, I used to play Army all the time. Bang, I got you. No, bang, I got you. I could never once remember one incident in my childhood when I played politician. And when I grew up a young man, I was the youngest company commander in the United States Navy Seabees. You know, the Mud Marines, the Naval Construction Forces. You turn Iwo Jima into something besides a photo op for the Corps. Anyhow, I got out of the service, and several years later, I was at the low point of my life. I mean, things were bad. And I cried out to God. I said, God, how about putting me back on active duty and making me a battalion commander? Long story short, he says, no, son, I got a higher rank for you. I'm going to make you the commander-in-chief. And I stagger not at his promise. I'll get into that more with you. Don't think I'm crazy, because I'm not.
All right, thanks, Mr. Brown. Mr. Bays, your opening remarks.
I stand on principles. I went to jail for homeschooling, and my kids turned out pretty good. I had 4 sons that made pro rodeo cowboys and 1 daughter. I've got 77 descendants. My wife and I had 16 kids, 8 boys and 8 girls, and I've got a lot at stake here. We've got a thing called abortion. The 8th Circuit Court ruled that life starts at conception, that an abortion kills a living human being. We've got a state murder defined, and that murder includes the killing of a preborn child. If I'm governor, I am going to enforce the law, and somebody says, what about the Supreme Court? If the Supreme Court goes to hell, I'm not following. And I'll tell you, folks, when you murder 56 million babies, you're asking for a country to be demolished. You can read the Bible and study it, but when people go to doing things like we're doing, we catch it.
All right, thank you for your opening remarks.
This week, a federal judge overturned Idaho's constitutional ban on same-sex marriage.
Discrimination. Let me tell you about discrimination. In 1964, the blacks got the Civil Rights Act passed. We bikers, discrimination. The cops, we are cop magnets, like a Playboy bunny wearing a miniskirt gets hit on all the time. They pull us over without probable cause, and they bring out the sniffing dogs, and they search us on our bikes. Even when we're not flying our colors, if you're a leather-clad Harley-Davidson driver, you know, the cops are going to zero in on you like a heat-seeking missile. Okay, discrimination. I used to drive taxis in Boise for 20 years at night. And I picked up my fair share of the gay community, and they have true love for one another. I'm telling you, they love each other more than I love my motorcycle. And, you know, they're just as American as a Medal of Honor winner. And liberty and justice for all, equal protection under the law. I'm glad that judge made that decision, and I'm glad that they want to get married and live like that. And I know I'm not really talking like a Republican, but...
Could we hear from Mr. Bays?
Sorry, ma'am. I didn't know what my time limit was.
Okay.
I didn't see any of these lights going on.
Mr. Bays, your response.
Okay. My response is my main loyalty is to God Almighty, and what He says is what I go by. And this is part of the Bible. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another. Men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bays. Governor Otter, the next question is for Harley Brown.
Mr. Brown, you've posted bigoted jokes on your website, skewering women and gays and Jews and Asians and Polish people like
and
me.
Bikers and Irishmen too.
And yeah, Irishmen too. How is that sort of disrespect for people going to allow you to govern?
A substantial portion of my political campaign is campaigning against political correctness. It's a lot of the working class. Oh, by the way, when you did your introduction, I wanted the fact that I was the president of the Bombers Motorcycle Club and that I was a long-haul truck driver, okay? I wanted to get the low-range stuff, not just the high stuff, engineer and all that, but like a fuller 9-speed transmission. They got the granny low and go all the way up to overdrive. And I have experience through the entire spectrum of our society. And I like blue-collar values. And those Harleyisms that I called had a lot of warning on there. You know, you might find this offensive, but I hit everybody. Jews, Polish people, Irish, Italians, religious jokes, and black jokes. And by the way, my wife screened that, and we took the real hardcore zingers out. So in case I get any flack from people like you, note that, you're mild, I can fire that back and attack my attackers. I don't like political correctness. Can I say this? It sucks. It's bondage. And I'm about as politically correct as your proverbial turd in a punch bowl. And I'm proud of it, and I'm going for it, and I'm going for the vote of the real people out there, not these bondage type people who don't have a clue about picking up strangers at night and hauling them God knows where. Try that for a while.
All right.
All right. Okay.
Next question is for
I don't
Mr.
see any
Bays.
lights, ma'am.
The next question's for Mr. Bays.
Mr. Bays, you've said you're running because you have a platform. This gives you a platform to talk about your views on abortion. If lightning struck and you were elected governor, could you do the job?
Well, back when they told me that we couldn't homeschool, I prayed about it. I stood on my hind legs like a man. I told them what I thought of them, and the television would talk to me for 30 minutes or an hour. And, well, what would you do if they came out to take your kids? Well, I'd shoot them. What else would you do? I can stand up where these guys are falling down. I don't know how to put it, but how many of them have been in jail for what they believe? How many of them come out of jail and said, you haven't changed a thing? What I am going to do is to do the right thing. He says it's not politically correct. I agree with him that much. I don't care about politically correctness. If I am correct, that's the end of it. Abortion is murder. It is by state law. It is any way you look at it. And if I am the governor, it'll be my job, my duty, and my privilege to stop abortions in this state, and it'll stay that way till somebody throws me out.
All right, the next question is for Mr. Brown from Aaron Coons.
Mr. Brown, not a lot. You haven't been in government that anyone can remember, so I really want to get an idea of how you intend to tackle the economy here in the state of Idaho. How do you create more jobs?
As it says in my motorcycle club, hey diddle diddle right up the middle. That's my style. If there's a better way, I'll take it, but I like going right into it. I've managed billions of dollars of military construction projects as a Civil Engineer Corps officer in the United States Navy and as a GS-12 professional engineer in the Army Corps of Engineers. In fact, the biggest military construction project since since Vietnam, was Fort Drum. We essentially built an entire city of 26,000 people from scratch, $2.6 billion. And I was in charge of all the demolitions, and I was also on the project management team. I'm a modest guy, but I'm going to say I'm a great leader. They didn't make me the youngest company commander in the Seabees when I was only an ensign, an 01, second lieutenant. That usually goes to a full captain, an 03. But I handled the job. It was a growth job, but I handled it, and I have no, first of all, leadership. Act like it's impossible to fail, and then delegate and follow up. I don't see any lights. I don't know what time I have.
It's actually time to move on to Mr. Bays.
Yes, ma'am.
Same question. I just want to get your ideas on how you intend to increase or build the economy here in the state of Idaho.
The first thing I want to do is take Idaho ground back from the federal government. The Constitution, the Idaho Constitution, states plainly that the federal government only owns a few buildings. The land is ours. We've got as much right to all the land in this state, including the wilderness, as New York has to Manhattan. I've got as much right to see Manhattan Island like they gave $24 for it, as they have to come out here and look at our wilderness. We've got a bunch of eastern idiots running everything. I stopped at a Forest Service and asked the guy, why don't we put some clear cuts through and cut down on these fires? He says it'd work, but we can't do it because the people back east don't like clear cuts. Our woods are being burnt. Governor Otter, he hollers about the emissions and tried to make me take an emissions test, and I told him what to do with it. And my wife drove 3 years without any license over it. Nobody done anything. But anyway, what I'm saying is we're wasting all kinds of wood out there, and they're burning it and smogging this place up, and it's a bunch of garbage. They don't know what they're doing.